I'm glad that we're recognizing Abolition Commemoration Day as a day of commemoration in the state so that people can understand that, slavery has a deep, dark past. And we tend to think of just southern states as the slaveholder states. But there were many enslaved Africans in the South, but in 1703, more than 42% of households in New York City had slaves. So, and over time, the North became known as a more as a better venue for those of us. But I want us to make sure we recognize that there is a history of slavery here, and to recognize the freedom of our people in New York State. So I wanted to make sure I thanked the New York State branches of ASALH, specifically Miss Bessie Jackson. Bessie Jackson is 94 years young and speaks with amazing tenacity. She's ferocious, and she's been calling me every day since she's known me, but even before I got elected, to tell me how important this is. And being 94 years old, Ms. Jackson has seen a few things. She's seen a few things that I'm sure she hasn't liked. But today is the day that I hope that we can make Ms. Jackson proud, and those other members of ASALH, such as Dina Robbins, one of my former high school teachers, and so many others, to finally say that we're recognizing the day that that slaves became free in New York State is a momentous occasion, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity for us to mark that day of commemoration. But again, let's not rest on those laurels to just simply make a day of commemoration. Let us understand what the past was so that we're not doomed to repeat it in the future.
Greetings. My name is Louise Dente, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this edition is a special as we recognize a very distinguished New Yorker. She is the New York State Director of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. She also is very critical to the establishment of a very important holiday here in New York State. We want to welcome Mrs. Bessie Jackson to Cultural Caravan.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
One of the things, first of all, I want to say is that, I wanted people to, first of all, understand a little bit about who you are and what role you have in helping to enact a very important legislation here in New York State. But first, let's talk about yourself. I know that you mentioned that you were not born in New York. Can you tell us a bit about your upbringing?
I was born in the state of Alabama, in Dallas County, near Selma, Alabama. And I went to school there until my last year in high school. Then I came to New York. As soon as I got to New York, I liked it. And I finished high school in New York. I finished Morris High School in the Bronx. And I've lived in the Bronx pretty much since that time. Although I did go back to Alabama and to Alabama State College for a couple of years in Montgomery, Alabama. And after that, I came back to New York. And when I went back to college again, I went to Columbia Teachers College. And that's where I received my degree. And as a matter of fact, I received my bachelor's degree at Teachers College, and I stayed on there and received my MA. Then I took courses and stayed at Teachers College.
Talk to us about you later became, now you're at the point, recognized as the highest officer in the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. What led you to join that organization?
I had started teaching here in the public school system before I found out about the organization. And the interesting thing about it is that it had been functioning in the state of Alabama, and in fact in all the southern states. It had been functioning. Carter G. Woodson started this organization. And and I was at Alabama State College when there was a meeting held by the members of this association. But I didn't realize it was the same association. At the time, the name of the association was the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. And when I started teaching here in the Bronx, someone came to the school who was a member of that organization. And he found out that I was working there. And he came to my room and started talking to me about the work the organization was doing and invited me to come to a meeting. So I went to that meeting and I was highly impressed. And then they had another meeting, and I was told about that. And that one was held in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I found out that there were branches of this association. And they gathered at this meeting in New Jersey. And it was really quite a well-planned meeting. I learned a lot, and I realized I needed to be a member.
With those out there who may not be familiar with the work and the purpose of establishing that organization of ASALH, what is the role? What is it about? What made Dr. Carter G. Woodson found this organization?
Well, Dr. Carter G. Woodson knew that we as a people, that is African Americans, needed to know more about our history. There were people who told us we didn't have a history. I was one who was told when I came to New York, I was told that African Americans didn't have a history. Now, I had not been told that in the South, because you see, when I went to school in the South, I had all African American teachers. And some of them might not have been very well prepared as educators, but they were great people. They were people who were interested in doing their very best in educating their students, and their students respected them. I had never seen students disrespect teachers when I went to school in the South. Of course, later on, after I came to New York, I found that there were some students who disrespected teachers and teachers who didn't seem to like the students. I didn't see that kind of situation in the South.
As the New York State Director for ASALH, as is also known, in 2004, you embarked on a mission, and which led us to the victory that we're going to talk about in a moment. But tell us, first of all, what inspired you to want to ensure that there was a holiday or recognition of the abolition of slavery here in New York State.
It was a mission. The mission was given to me. I did not go looking for it. It just absolutely came to me that this was something that I must do. You see, I always felt that if a job needs to be done and no one else is doing it, it must be my job. And I saw this as a job that needed to be done. So I didn't wait. I started talking to the people. At that time, I was the president of the Bronx branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Well, now, we don't just meet and discuss things among ourselves and then do nothing about it, you know? So I knew we had to do more than we were doing. Sure, we had to share our knowledge with others, but then we had to look around and see what we could do with that knowledge. You see, we were representing Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson wanted us to do something with the knowledge once you get it. So that was the mission. The mission then was to establish a New York State holiday, because a holiday is something that everybody in New York needed to get involved with and could get involved with, you see. So it became very important to me. And from one meeting to the other, I would talk about it and say, we should do this. And then finally, it just came to me so strongly that we must do this. So then we did.
I, too, being a member of ASALH, Bronx Division, and I recall you having these petitions and having people sign petitions. Also, I recall every year, even before this year, you had a celebration, commemoration of this day. So talk to us about the process.
I had to look around and see what should be done and what our ancestors had done. You see, our ancestors had not waited for anybody to come to rescue them. They wanted to be rescued, but nobody was coming. Nobody. From any other country, nobody was coming. So they knew that there was a God. So they prayed to God. They prayed and they sang and they did everything they knew to be right. And that's what I said we must do. The same God that brought them out of slavery would also bring us to wherever we wanted to go. So then I said, we must begin with a prayer. That's what our ancestors had taught us. So then we started the prayer breakfast. Yes. And we kept it up for 16 years before we actually got the legislators to sign it, to sign our petition, that is. They knew about it. We invited them every year to the prayer breakfast. But they didn't come. But we knew it didn't matter because we were praying to a God who was there. He was there every year with us. And every year our program became stronger and stronger so that people would see us and say, when are you having the prayer breakfast? You see, that was what we wanted. We knew it was happening. So it did happen.
And it happened basically July of 2020. Speaker Carl Hasty, Assembly Member J. Gary Pretlow, and Assembly Member Alicia Heineman announced that the Assembly passed the legislation to recognize both Juneteenth and the Abolition Commemoration Day in New York State. That is so important and that's why your story, and particularly the fact that you are 94 years young, you are not someone who believes that we should just sit around and just complain, that you actually continue to mobilize our community. You validated the day even before it was formally announced and proclaimed statewide, so that next year, 2021, right. July, the second Monday in July, right. Based on your efforts and continued efforts, we will be celebrating both Juneteenth, which many of you know, starts as well, but a holiday that particularly focuses on New York State history, the Commemoration Day, the Abolition Commemoration Day, which I want our viewers to know that Mrs. Bessie Jackson was instrumental in ensuring that people recognize the history of people of African ancestry and the abolition of slavery in this state. And that's so important. So I really feel, and it's so important that we understand that there's two dates. We know many people are aware of Juneteenth and its relevant as relates to our brothers and sisters in the state of Texas not finding out that slavery was abolished until years later. But New York State history, a lot of people didn't think that there was even slavery in New York up until the last maybe 10 years when people said, oh, there was slavery. But the fact that not only was it slavery, but it was abolished, obviously, and the fact that we have to make those markers. We have to ensure. And some people say, well, why is this important? Why is it important that we recognize that there was slavery here? So those who don't understand the importance of the history, what do you tell them?
If we don't understand our history, we're not giving ourselves credit as human beings. All human beings have a history. And our children need to know that we have a history, and they need to know what that history is. They are not going to know if we don't tell them. Mm-hmm. It is our responsibility to tell them. Mm-hmm. So we are now doing what we are supposed to do. This is our responsibility. Mm-hmm. If we don't do it, who is going to do it? Mm-hmm. And if we don't do it now, when is it going to happen? It will not happen if we don't show that we respect ourselves. This is self-respect. And that's important. We are important. We must be respected. If we don't respect ourselves, nobody else is going to.
Just so people know that this really commemorates the Abolition Act that passed the New York State Legislature in 1817 and abolished slavery effective July 4th of 1827. Okay, so that's really key. And basically this marks not only the abolition, the end of slavery in New York, but also honors the bravery and the sacrifices of our ancestors and those sympathizers who wanted to ensure that there was equality and basically human rights for all. And, so much has happened this year. Of course, we're all dealing with this pandemic, but also the fact that there was some terrible loss of life. There were brutality, a lot of people know of senseless killings of African American male and female this year, among other times. So much has happened, and I think that's one of the reasons why this year was critical, because not just in terms of understanding the importance of Juneteenth being a very important year as relates to understanding that it wasn't until that time when all Africa was understood that we were emancipated. But this year, particularly with New York being one of those states where people didn't acknowledge that slavery even took place until recently. So I think that now that we have an opportunity, the first full day is going to be in 2021, that we will have the opportunity to celebrate two important holidays, Juneteenth and the Abolition Commemoration Day, which our dear sister Bessie, you were very much instrumental on. So we have an opportunity to celebrate, to understand the importance of our history, human history, the importance of the contributions of people of African ancestry to this nation and to this state. And I think that it's important that people understand the work, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to introduce you to our audience, and also recognize the work that you've done, because we have to understand that our history is only going to be remembered and revered and respected when we respect it, when we remember. And so that's one of the things. And when you think about the young people today, I mean, we have a lot to look forward to, and the possibility as we sit here that the first woman of African ancestry may be in the seat of political power by the time this broadcast airs. Let's think about one of the things, but when you reflect on the work you've done and the contributions you've made, what are some of the things that you would like to see happen as it relates to education, particularly that you're in an organization that's dedicated to preserving the memory, the work of the great Dr. Carter G. Woodson? What are some of the things you would like to see in terms of education of our children and our community?
Well, I would like New York State Board of Education to recognize African Americans not just as contributions in various industry. I would like them to realize that African Americans need to be at the forefront of deciding on the curricula that is being used in our schools today. Our children need to understand that you don't just learn about other people, you learn about yourselves, and you start out learning about yourself, and then you learn about other people. And now this cannot happen if their teachers don't recognize that. So that has to be recognized, that our children need to be considered in program planning.
What you've done, particularly and we think about how the importance of acknowledging children of African ancestry, acknowledging the history and self-respect, the respect of human life, particularly as relates to people of African ancestry's contribution. I think that one of the things that I definitely want to see these two important dates, Juneteenth and the commemoration day, Abolition Commemoration Day, be major recognition celebrations as relates to how we can move towards ensuring that the curricula effectively supports and celebrates our history in conjunction to being part of the American history here. And certainly we want to continue to basically continue the work of the great Carter G. Woodson as you've done. And I just want to say, Sister Bessie, on behalf of Cultural Caravan, we salute your work. We salute your commitment to our community, commitment to being a dedicated New York State resident and someone who's actually not just talks the talk, but walks the walk. And I always feel, when I think about a model of persistence, you basically have a living legacy, a replica of someone who persisted and basically acknowledged and really brought forth this particular opportunity for us to celebrate and be celebrated for the work and the sacrifices that our ancestors have done. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the work you've done, and we can only honor what you do by continuing in your footsteps. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast, and we continue to encourage you to tune in, to write, and to tell a friend. And please visit our website at ccptv.org. Again, ccptv.org. But until next time, Louise Dente saying thank you.